Hi everyone, right, we're playing fantasy football a little bit on today's video. It's the international break, it's the perfect time for this kind of thing. We're going to take a look at basically how good Celtic could be, with the emphasis on the word could. Now this was after some comments that Ange made about a week or so ago when he spoke about the fact that it would take more than one transfer window for Celtic to get to where he wants to be, to complete the rebuild, so to speak. So I thought we could take a look at what areas of the Celtic team are badly in need of strengthening in January, and even further to that, we could maybe look at some of the players who could do that strengthening. Now, we're going to be doing a little bit of this kind of thing during the transfer window. I think it's good to look ahead and not always just to look back at recent games and stuff like that, to give you a bit of variation on the channel. And we're going to be doing a video later in the week where we look at some of the top players in Japan who Celtic could be after in January. But for this video, we're going to look a little bit closer to home. So, players at Celtic at the moment. Now, in terms of the first team, there's probably only two positions. They are left back and central midfield, next to Callum McGregor. Now, that's not to say that I don't think we need players in other positions as well, but I do think the players you see there in that team, the positions that are filled anyway, are good enough to win the league and compete in Europe with Celtic. Now, we definitely do need additions and backup players in other positions, and I will mention two of those positions later in the video, but for now let's focus on left back and centre midfield. So I've used transfermarkt.co.uk for this video. They've got a great searching feature where you can do just that. You can search for players based on position, age, nationality, eye colour, height, favourite James Bond movie. I don't know anything, but I've kind of kept it to age and position and also international experience a little bit, but we'll get on to that in a wee second. First of all, the two players I didn't have to look up at left back that I definitely think should be at the top of Celtic's list for the position are Aaron Hickey and Josh Doig. Now, we've mentioned both on the channel in the past, but let's bring you a little bit of an update on what both players have been up to since we last mentioned them on the channel. Aaron Hickey is, of course, the former Celtic youth player who left Hearts for Bologna at the start of last season. He went for £1.5 million and signed a contract until 2024. He's a big Celtic fan, and there was talk of him coming back in the summer there. Bologna were initially wanting about £6 million for him, which seemed quite a lot given they only paid a quarter of that for him 12 months prior. But they eventually decided they weren't wanting to sell him at all. He stayed at the club, and he's actually gone on this season to be a regular for them. And you've got to just remember that's in Serie A, one of the top leagues in Europe. Now, he's played their last 7 games. He's actually scored 2 goals in their last 3 games, including in the 3-0 win over Lazio last weekend, just prior to the international break. That form and those performances in such a strong league probably mean that he's too expensive for us now. To give us an indication of the kind of money that Bologna tend to get when they sell players, they got £17 million when they sold Takehiro Tomiyasu to Arsenal in the summer. So maybe we will have to turn our attention to a slightly cheaper and more viable option at home. And maybe that guy is Josh Doig. Now, he's the Hibernian fullback who Hibs manager Jack Ross had basically waved goodbye to in the summer. You may recall that he actually left Doig out for, I think, a couple of games as the likes of Watford and Burnley upped their interest in him. It looked like a done deal at that stage that Doig would be going to the English Premier League. However, it didn't happen, and he's been back in the Hibs side and playing very well in the week since. The one problem that I'm having with these two players, and the same will probably occur to Ange if he was to be interested in them or any other teenagers, is does it make much sense to sign a Doig or a Hickey, both 19 years old, when we have our own 19-year-old left back at the club, Adam Montgomery? Now, I really like the look of Adam Montgomery. I think he had a pretty tough time of it over the last 2 or 3 matches. The Dundee United home game when he came on as a sub, I think for Juranovic, he was really poor that afternoon. I think he had a torrid night against Leverkusen as well, and I didn't actually think he was great at Pittodrie either, albeit that he set up the winning goal for Jota. But I do think he's a huge talent, and I actually don't think that either Doig or Hickey are going to be much better than Montgomery when they all reach their peak. I think Montgomery is just as good as the other two. So does it make much sense for Celtic to go and sign a teenage left back, pay big money? You know, we're talking probably 4 or 5 million at least for Doig, and you're probably talking even more than that for Aaron Hickey. Does it make much sense when we've got a player like Montgomery at the club? But is Montgomery ready to be Celtic's left back in a title charge? I'm not convinced. Now, he's obviously going to have to be probably for the next few weeks and months until Greg Taylor comes back or Liam Scales or even Bolly Bolingoli makes their claim in the first team. But for now, I think we could look to upgrade that position in January and probably bring in an experienced player. Now, I was looking at the other side. In the summer, we signed Josip Juranovic at right back. Celtic fans loved that signing. It was the exact kind of credentials and criteria, and what other word could I use? It was the exact type of profile you look for in a Celtic signing. He was in the peak years, or certainly just coming into his peak years. He's a regular, a first-team player for Croatia. And I thought if we could get a similar player on the left-hand side to complement Montgomery, I think that would be great. And I looked at a player like Arkadiusz Reka. Now, he's a Polish international who plays for Spezia in Italy. He's 26 years old and he gets game time for Poland, although he wasn't in their Euro squad. Maybe that's the kind of player Celtic should look to sign in January. Okay, moving into midfield, and we really need to find a partner for Callum McGregor. This is probably the number one glaring issue currently in that Celtic first team. We've got some options there. Nir Bitton started against Aberdeen. James McCarthy started matches already this season, I think. Yeah, he's definitely started a couple. And Ismail Assoro as well. Ismail Assoro. I don't think any of those three are the answer right now. I still think James McCarthy could be going forward, but even if James McCarthy is the answer alongside Callum McGregor, then we need to sign another player as well, because we're just so light in that area. We've seen that already when Callum McGregor picked up that injury, how light we were and how much we rely on him. We need to sign another midfielder who can complement what we've got there and or be the guy that plays next to Callum McGregor. Now, I've thought of a few. The first one that came to mind, well, I tell a lie, it came on the screen, was Nicholas Dorsch. Now, this is a player we were linked with about a year ago, 18 months ago, when he was playing for Heidenheim in the second tier of German football. Since then, he's had a busy time of it because he left Heidenheim for Ghent in Belgium, spent one season there before Augsburg paid £6 million, 7 million euros for him in the summer. Now, he's been a regular for them. He's probably therefore unlikely to leave in January. So maybe Nicholas Dorsch isn't the guy Celtic should go for, but it's the kind of profile of player Celtic should go for at 23 years old. Another guy is Senegal international Nampalys Mendy. He is a player who plays for Leicester. I say play, he actually hasn't played, I don't think, at all this season. He has had injury problems over the last couple of years. He hasn't been fancied by Brendan Rodgers, so perhaps a loan move with an option to buy would work for him. He has been likened to Claude Makelele by numerous coaches in France back in the day, and even had a loan spell at Nice a couple of seasons ago. So this is the kind of player, again, that I'd like to see Celtic go for, and more disciplined, more effective Ismail Assoro would be ideal in that midfield, I think. We need someone who can break up the play, but also keep it. And I think Soro does one of those things to an extent, but he just isn't good enough on the ball. He's far too erratic for it to work. Leicester paid £13 million for Mendy back in 2016, so they would possibly be looking to recoup a decent chunk of that. but he is out of contract in 2023, so perhaps Celtic could strike and get him for a lower fee there. A final player I wanted to look at, and this is probably my favourite player of the centre mid collection, is Swedish international Jens Kyusta. Now, he actually should have played against Celtic earlier this season for Midfield, but he was one of the, I think, 3 or 4 players for them that didn't play because he seemed certain to be leaving the club. That obviously didn't happen. He's 22 years old, he's 6'2", and he also is out of contract in 2023. Midfield don't tend to get huge fees for their best players. Their current record is the £9 million they got for Frank Onyeka when he left for Brentford in the summer just there. So is Kyusta the kind of player that Celtic could look at and maybe get for 5 or 6 million? I certainly think as a Sweden international and a player that's probably looking for his next move, just speak to Eric Sviatchenko, this could be the kind of player, again, the kind of profile that I'd like to see Celtic move for. In terms of other obvious positions that we need to strengthen and add numbers to, not necessarily first team players or starting 11 players, but players who can come in and can, make sub appearances and we can rotate the team basically. Kevin Nisbet, you can just look at any of the previous 84 videos I've done on him to find out my thoughts on him. I would just love to see us sign him in January. I still think we're light up front because I don't really think Yeti's a serious option anymore, and we still don't know how Giakoumakis is going to do. I don't think you can ever call a new signing a reliable option, and if that's the case, Kyogo is really our only reliable option up front. So I'd love to see his move for Kevin Nisbet. Left wing, I think we need someone to help Jota because Mikey Johnson, again, is just not reliable enough for me. The one that stood out to me was Marco Grull, who is a 23-year-old Rapid Vienna left winger who has already struck 9 goals this season, including 3 in Europe. Grull has actually just been called up to the Austria squad recently, so he's clearly a guy that's on the up. Markets like Austria are the kind of ones that I like to see Celtic shopping in, and to be fair to whoever's idea it was, Don Mackay, Ange, whatever, we did do a good bit of that in the summer. Not directly in Austria, I don't think, but we looked at under-tapped markets. There was much less looking down south and much more looking at Israel, Japan, Russia, I would say, is a kind of under-tapped market with Karel Starfelt obviously coming in there. Help me out, who else have we signed in the summer? Poland, Netherlands as well. The players we signed from England were mainly free agents and loan deals with cheapish options to buy. Portugal obviously with Jota as well. So this is the kind of stuff we've seen Celtic do more in the summer, and I think we'll continue to see that. We know we're going to get some players from Japan because Ange has basically come out and said that. As I say, we will touch on that more later in the week. Maybe we'll even pick out a few players from Japan who could sign for Celtic. But for now, those are the key issues I think Celtic have to try and sort in January. I'm sure you'll have your thoughts as well. Of course, let me know in the comments below what you think of what I've said, and also if there's any players that you would love to see Celtic move for that would be an instant fit at Celtic. And yeah, remember to subscribe to the channel. We're going to try and keep motoring with subs even over the international break, and we'll speak to you very soon.